So today's session, we'll try to make it a little bit of fun, a little bit of more deep insights, but definitely something you can take home and ponder upon in your daily lives. And the topic being, how do we win the war within? My first question to you, Prabhu, how do you define the inner war or the inner battle, and what are the primary battles we face in our minds and hearts?
Well, even in today's world, there is this term that people have got some demons inside them. Like, say, when Sachin Tendulkar was about to score his 100th century, it became like a big psychological baggage on him. And he is at 99 centuries before that. So making a century, another more century is not a big deal. But it is the different terms, like a monkey on the back or a mental burden. So basically, the idea that there is something inside us that works against us. That's something which we all experience in our lives. And the essence of the battle is this thing, say, if I want to move in one direction, but there is something inside me which is pushing me in the opposite direction. And that force inside me, which is pushing me in a direction that I know is not good for me. That is the force against which we need to fight. So basically, you could say the inner battle is against the forces within that stop us from becoming the best version of ourselves. Now, the specifics of what that inner battle is, what are the forces inside against whom we are fighting, we could go into the details of that. But in essence, the inner battle is that we all have unrealized potentials. And to some extent, we know the path to realize those potentials. And yet something seems to stop us, slow us, or completely sabotage us in trying to go there. And we may see this very often, especially in sports, where in sports there are players who just get some attack of nerves, lose their cool, and they self-destruct. But in some ways, sports can be a microcosm for life. So that's the inner battle. Fighting against the forces that stop us from being the best version of ourselves.
Prabhu, when you talk of fighting against forces that stop us from being the best version of ourselves, everyone would agree with me that there's a constant battle between pleasure and purpose. And at times when purpose gets the better of you, you have a fear that, life will get a little boring. When pleasure gets the better of you, you think, life's getting meaningless. Or how do you make sense of this, Prabhu?
Yeah. See, that's why in the Gita, when it talks about the lower self and the higher self, there are two verses, 6.5 and 6.6. So 6.5 is Uddhared Atmanatmanam Natmanam Avasadayet Atmaiva Atmano Vanva Atmaiva Ripuratmanaha. So it's saying that there is a part of us which is the observer, and there is a part of us which is the reactor. You could say actor, but I'm specifically using the word reactor. Things happen and we react to it. And now, what Krishna is saying is, now in some tradition this is called as the higher self and the lower self. So Krishna is telling us that the higher self should act in such a way that we go upwards. And not that the lower self acts and pull the higher self downwards. So elevate yourself with yourself. Don't degrade yourself with yourself. That's the idea. Now this can be done in two distinct ways. And the two ways have opposite results. One is, some people think self-improvement means that my higher self goes higher up and my lower self, I bury it deep underground. So this creates a lot of inner tension. But so if this is what is being done, that means, say, I know I should not get angry. And somebody does something which enrages me. But I use all my willpower, I just dominate myself and don't express any emotion at all. And I can do it once, twice, maybe 50 times, maybe 100 times. But the 101st time, I'll explode. And that time it might be a small trigger, but my explosion will not be just because of that small thing the person did. All the 100 things will come out. So actual growth is not this way. So if we think, my higher self will dominate the lower self, it doesn't work. So you could say the higher self is looking for purpose, let's be correct with your question. The lower self is looking for pleasure. So ideally speaking, what should happen is, if say, this was the original situation, the higher self and the lower self, gradually both go upwards. The higher self goes upward, the lower self also goes up. That means that the things I seek pleasure in, they also grow higher. As a child, somebody might seek pleasure in just playing with toys. Now as we grow older, we don't seek pleasure necessarily in those things. We don't need pleasure. So it's like the part of us which seeks for higher purpose, that definitely goes higher. But the part of us which seeks pleasure, that also goes higher. And that's why there has to be an inner dialogue. It's not a domination of the higher self by the lower self. If we are trying in the inner war, so the second verse I'll talk about to just complete this point, that when Krishna says, sometimes this dynamic is used with the mind and the intelligence. So the mind is considered to be the enemy sometimes. But normally if you have an enemy, you just want to kill the enemy. But Krishna doesn't say kill your mind. Krishna, what does he say about the mind? Make it your friend. So, why is that? That's because the mind is a part of us. So, it's more of integration of the two parts of us, not the domination of one part by the other part. So, each individual will have to find out how this negotiation can be done appropriately. So what is the balance of pleasure and purpose that each one can find, that each individual has to decide? And of course we can take guidance from others, but it's like there is, we could say, there is the present me and then there is the potential me. So now, if I pander only to the present me all the time, well, this is what I enjoy right now. That's what I do. I like watching movies, I like going to parties. I enjoy those things. So if the present me is all that we are pandering to, then that will lead to stagnation. I'll stay where I've never grown. I was in Chicago and I was in university. There's one boy who had a t-shirt, "You are perfect as you are." Now a lot of people like to have some affirmations and do some positive things, which is fair enough. But now you can say, you are valuable as you are treasured as you are loved as you are. But to say you are perfect as you are, that means there's no room for improvement. Can anyone say that? That's unhealthy. So if we are pandering only to the present me, we will stagnate. Not only stagnate, there can also be degradation. We can stagnate means stay where we are, degradation means go lower down. On the other hand, if we are caring only for the future me, the potential me, then what will happen is, then we suffer. Yeah, I know this is good for the future, but for the future me to come, the present me also has to survive. Isn't it? The present me is feeling so pressured. Oh, this rule, this discipline, don't do this, can't do this. It won't work for them. So now, this balance between the present me and the future. Krishna says, Yukta ahara viharasya. That Yukta is regulated. So how much to care for the present me, how much to care for the future. So you could say the present me is connected broadly with pleasure. The future me is connected with purpose. Generally when we use the word purpose, it is about somewhere we plan to go in the future. So we have to find that balance. And each person will find it differently. So that's why that inner discussion is important. Sometimes we may go too much in the direction of pleasure. Sometimes we may go too much in the direction of purpose. And then we all learn. And we grow. So it's not that we want to dominate ourselves and make ourselves our slave. We conclude one point. It's like I have been to America almost 6 to 9 months a year for the last 10 years. Not America, the Western world, America, UK, Australia, New Zealand. Spending a lot of time there. So it's almost like the Indian parenting or Eastern parenting in general is more of concern for the future child. And the Western parenting is concern for the present child. Now, if both can have their positives and both can have their negatives. So in the West, if you go to university, any of the Ivy League universities, they don't have admission by merit. Because if they had admission by merit, they would be filled with Chinese and Indians. So it's like no other denomination can match with the competitive ability of Indians and Chinese. So they have their own diversity quotas, and an Indian with 4.9 CGPA will not get into Harvard, but a black with 3.9 CGPA or a Latino with 3.9 CGPA will get in. Now they have their reasons. They say we want to have a diverse community over there, which is okay. But the point I'm making here is that the Indian way of parenting, where they focus on the future, it brings results in terms of making sure that the kids have a good career. In America, Indians are the wealthiest minority. Among all the denominations, there are many immigrants in America, but Indians are the wealthiest minority. And Indians are considered what they call as the model minority. That any immigrant who comes there, they say we would like them to be Indian. Indians are respected, and you can say Indians are envied over there. So, but the problem with this is, often people get railroaded or straitjacketed into particular careers which the parents think will be good for the children. And that can become a problem. But in the West, children are given too much autonomy. And it's like you decide whatever you want to do. I was with an American devotee couple, and their daughter just finished her 12th. No, she just finished her 10th. And then she was going to go from school to college. So I asked her which field is she going to take. And the father looked at his daughter, the daughter was not there. Father looked at his mother, the husband looked at his wife, and said, we never asked what she wanted to do. So it was not even a topic of discussion. In India, probably that's in second standard, we get to the topic of discussion what you're going to do after 12th. So sometimes too much autonomy creates problems. So now there are of course brilliant kids in America also, I'm not denying that. But the overall performance, I started with the statistic of all the Ivy League universities being filled with Indians and Chinese. Because if the kids are given too much autonomy, they will be concerned only about the present, not so much of the potential. And then it becomes a problem. So there could be both extremes where a person feels suffocated or a person stagnates. So what applies to parent to children, we can say eventually each one of us has to become like a parent for the child within us. And rather than consider the lower self to be an enemy which has to be destroyed, actually it has to be transformed. So the lower self also has to be integrated. And so that over a period of time, even the lower self will rise upwards. And that's actual transformation. It's not that the lower self gets buried. So it's like, I'll explain one last one, what the lower self rising means. So we will all get angry at times. Life is provocative, people are provocative, and we are provocable. So we will all get angry. But as we get spiritualized, as the word in the word is purified. As we get purified, our anger will be within different boundaries. Say, there could be different boundaries for somebody's anger. Some people, when they get angry, in America, guns are easily available. Somebody can take a gun and shoot people. It's a horrible thing. Somebody might take a knife. In UK, there are no guns allowed, but people have knives and they go around killing with knives. So somebody may get angry and they may raise their fist. somebody may get angry and they may speak swear words. Somebody get angry and raise their voice. So now each of these is an expression of anger. As we get purified, it is not that we won't get angry, but even our anger will be within different limits. Maybe in the past, when I got angry, I would want to hit someone. Now when I get angry, I may raise my voice. I may not speak swear words. So that's how even the lower self starts rising. Does it address the question?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes. I loved the point where you made you don't bury your lower self, but address it.
Negotiate with it, not address it, negotiate with it. Because the lower self is also a part of us. It is not, it may be working against us right now, but it is still a part of us.
You've got to make peace with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
On our terms, not its terms. Of course, you can say on mutually acceptable terms, but primarily our terms. In like one of the main reasons for the Second World War, they say was after the First World War ended, the Allies, they imposed really humiliating terms on Germany. The Treaty of Versailles, which was the reason why Hitler was able to invoke the German national pride. They are totally humiliated after. Now, as contrast to that, America and the Allied powers learned the lessons. Japan was hugely bombed. Even now, war historians, they debate whether the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was decisive. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But in spite of that, after that, Japan and America didn't become enemies. So what was the difference? Germany was split into two parts. And Germany didn't become although the Allied powers bombed Germany didn't become an enemy. Because the underlying, it is not that all the citizens over there were bad. It's just there are some power-hungry politicians, there are some people who follow those politicians or military leaders. But once they were removed, then the country was helped to grow. The country was helped by America to progress. Like what India has done in Kashmir. No, it is not that in order to control Kashmir, we destroy Kashmir. We had to destroy those people who were completely against India. But after that, we have to equip and help the other residents of Kashmir to flourish. And that's how there's a relatively greater peace over there. So there's definitely a fight required. But the fight, in the inner war, it's not like dropping an atom bomb and destroying the whole lower self. There are some parts of the lower self which are unacceptable. Like when I get angry, I may say that, using foul words, that's unacceptable. But if I say anger itself is unacceptable, no, it's natural. In just that there are times when we all get angry. And basically anger is because we care. Anger is an expensive emotion. It's very expensive for the body, it's expensive for the mind. If somebody gets angry about something, that means they really care for that. So anger is natural. If I start being anger itself is unacceptable, the only way to do that is stop caring for anything else. Then you will never get angry. But that doesn't work. We cannot live like that if we don't care for anything. We don't care for anything, that means we have no purpose in our life. No cause to live for. So anger is not a bad thing. So that's why dominating the lower self would mean that's outlawing anger itself. But negotiating with the lower self would mean that, this expression of anger is unacceptable. Is that difference?
Yeah. Makes sense, Prabhu. Prabhu, you spoke about the stark difference between parenting in the Eastern world and the Western world. I was surprised this time during Janmashtami. There was a 3-year-old kid. I mean, not 3-year-old. He was in his third standard, and he came up to me and said, "Prabhu, were you in IIT?" I said, "IIT? No, I wish, but I was never in IIT." What surprised me is someone in the 3rd grade knew what IIT is. I've heard 7th standard kids speaking about preparing for JEE, which blows my mind out. Prabhu, the difference between autonomy and focusing on the future me that you said. Is that something that is inherent, or is that even influenced by your external circumstances?
By inherent, you're talking about the parents or about the children or both?
Both, Prabhu.
Well, there is a mainstream ethos in every society. There are different political systems in the world. And if I say I'm not talking about politics, but I'm talking more about political philosophy. So there is the right, which are more conservative. There is left, and there is liberal. Sometimes left and liberal are mixed together, but they are different. So right, generally speaking, the right is concerned with hierarchy. Their idea is, those people who are on the right, they are concerned with hierarchy. This is the person in authority, this is the person subordinate. You obey this, and by this order will be maintained. So hierarchy is the biggest value. Like in military, hierarchy is important. Now, the commander gives the command, you have to follow it. So there are some places where hierarchy is essential. But the right is primarily concerned with hierarchy. And generally, those on the right are conservatives. So India is broadly a conservative place. China is also conservative. Russia is also. Generally, the Eastern world is conservative overall. Now, the left is concerned. Their defining value is equality. That communism was driven by the idea that all people are equal. And so their idea is that, okay, there is this hierarchy. This hierarchy is causing a problem in society. Or those who are at the bottom of the hierarchy are being exploited. Therefore, we should have equality. And now there is truth to that also. It's possible that those at the bottom of the hierarchy could be exploited. But what communism overlooks is that, or what communism assumes, that all hierarchies are hierarchies of power. And all hierarchies are constructed by the powerful exploiting the powerless. But hierarchy could also be of competence. If say we have a heart attack and they rush to a hospital and they say equality, anybody can do the heart surgery. That won't work, isn't it? So you have to be trained for that. So a hierarchy could be a hierarchy of competence. That possibility is there. Now, is it that the person on top will always be more competent? Not necessarily. So when any of these values is absolutized, that becomes a problem. So the left, Soviet Russia earlier, was leftist, that was equality. Now America was neither right nor left primarily. America was driven by liberal values. And liberal values is more about autonomy. Autonomy is basically, you let me do my thing. So there is a social structure, and that social structure is what the hierarchy wants to preserve. The left says the social structure is the problem, that's what we want to destroy. The liberals say, I don't mind the structure is there, leave me out of it. I'm not going to fight against the social structure, but just let me do what I want to do. So, broadly speaking, these three are very different philosophical ways of looking at the world. So, for example, India is a federation. Federation means the center gives powers to the state. America is a confederation. Confederation means the states give power to the center. At any time, any state in America can decide we want to secede from America. And they can secede. It's not easy, but they can do it. So, the idea is that the way India was designed, hierarchy was more important. Now, all of these, they can function in their own way, in their own space. Now, I talk about, ultimately, if there is love, not in the sentimental, teenagerish sense, but love in the sense of service and dedication, then any of these HEAL, that's an acronym. Now, Bhakti is ultimately about loving service. So, all these three social systems can be used ultimately for higher goals. But none of these should be absolutized. If hierarchy is made the absolute value, then it becomes a problem. If equality is made the absolute value, then it becomes a problem. Autonomy is made the absolute value. If autonomy is made the absolute value, what is the problem? That everybody is doing their own thing and nobody is caring for the larger good. That's why John F. Kennedy has said that ask not what the country has done for you, ask what you have done for the country. So, nation. So the point is that with respect to your this question about this, well, it does about are these innate? Yes, it does seem like that. That there are more and more as we have. I talk from a Shastric perspective, but for scientific perspective, as we have more and more brain imaging being done and neuroscience advancing, it seems that different people are wired differently. There are some people who are wired to respect hierarchy. Now they will respect the hierarchy and they will rise high up in the hierarchy. Yeah, I was where was I? I was in Scotland. There was one teenager girl, she's a Scottish girl, and she said, we were driving along. There's one devotee driving. The devotee immediately says that you're sitting behind. She said, hey, you're going above the speed limit. Okay, he slowed down. No, you're not meant to go like this, not like that. Then I asked her, do you like rules? So I love rules. I mean, who will say I love rules? She said, rules bring order. Now, of course, there's a perverse joy when people say they love rules, they love to impose rules on others. That is also possible. But many times they themselves will respect rules. And they get very agitated if others don't respect rules. So from the Shastric perspective, the scriptural perspective, we all have certain samskaras from the past. So some people, by their samskaras, they have that samskara by which they want order, they want structure. Some people want equality. Some people want autonomy. Whatever social structure you have, I don't care. I respect it. Not that I want to fight against it. But let me do my own. So you could say that there is overall cultural ethos, and that can come from one's past life karma. So it's not that the liberals, the conservatives, the left people, they have complete disagreement of values. See, like American parents or Indian parents, all parents care for their children. All parents want their children to grow up and become good, wonderful people. But it's not the values are different, it is which value is prioritized is different. It's not that when people value hierarchy, they don't value autonomy or equality at all. They feel hierarchy is more important. Or somebody else will say, okay, hierarchy is important, but I want to do my own thing. Autonomy is more important for me. Is it becoming too abstract or it's clear overall?
No, it does make sense, Prabhu.
So just to complete this, now coming to our topic of fighting the inner war. Everybody has to fight the inner war. But depending on, like say, consider different professions. If somebody is an artist, artists are very creative. And creativity cannot be legislated. You cannot have creativity as a 9-to-5 job. So you may decide that 9 to 5 I will do a creative work. But that doesn't mean throughout 9 to 5 we'll get equal amount of creative ideas all the time. So generally creative people require autonomy. And that's how artists work. So they need their space. Even in big companies like Intel, Google, all of these, they have like special departments. They say they have different mavericks, genius, different words they use for that. And for those people, they have no daily job deadlines. They have no daily time log. What did you do from this time to this time, this time? We just give them autonomy. And for 6 months, they may do no work. And at the end of the 6th month, they may bring up an idea which can change the whole industry. So they realize that some people need that and they need the space and they're given that space. So let's say that different professions also require different degrees of, they require different values to be prominent. Like somebody is a doctor, somebody is a surgeon. Hierarchy is very important over. The surgeon tells the nurse, get this. Nurse says, no, I'll be creative, I'll get something else. It won't work at that, isn't it? So there are certain professions also where certain values may be more important. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, Prabhu. Prabhu, I must say one thing. Your command over global history is terrific. Uh,
I once gave a class. After that, one devotee came. He said, "The class was terrible." Then what? He was so happy. I was thinking, was he being sarcastic? And he was, what did he say? He said, "Class was terrible." Okay. And I asked him, okay, what did you find terrible about the class? And he started speaking all good points. Then after that, I realized his English was not very good. He wanted to say terrific and he said terrible.
Prabhu, I'm sure I said and meant terrific. Prabhu, we were discussing about fighting the inner battles where heal hierarchy, equality, and autonomy, even in our daily lives. There are many decisions that we like to be autonomous about. There are many decisions or activities that hierarchy makes more sense to us. Prabhu, when you're fighting all these inner battles with different strategies, where does a devotional practice or bhakti come into the play or come into the scene, and does it help you overcome these battles, or how do you place your devotional practice in all of this?
Well, two ways. At one level, bhakti becomes one more battle you have to fight. Because at one level, we have so many things to do, and this becomes one more thing which we have to do. And quite often, we don't feel like doing it. So it does, at one level, it does become one more battle we have to fight. But at another level, this is a battle which can empower us to fight other battles. It is like an athlete. The athlete, at the actual time is they want to go and perform. They have to perform in athlete. But before that, they have to do a lot of workouts. Sometimes the workout itself will be like a battle. I don't want to do it. But the workout that they do, that will prepare them. The more they do the workouts, the better trained they are, the better they will actually perform. My friend is in the military. He says that the more you sweat in peace, the less you will bleed in war. Or a sober statement. The more you sweat in peace, and the more you train, the more you are rigorous, the more you become alert, then the less you will bleed in war. So in that sense, bhakti is like that battle. Say if you do a sadhana every morning, then bhakti is like that battle which you fight at the start of the day. Do a sadhana, and that gives us clarity, greater clarity. So once we get that greater clarity, all the other battles become relatively easier to fight. And say if we have anger issues, we have anxiety issues, we have resentment, we have insecurity, whatever issues we have, if at the start of the day we have connected ourselves with Krishna, basically, what does bhakti actually do for us? In general, for us, the world is very big, and Krishna is very small. Yeah, he's up there somewhere. When I started practicing bhakti, I started sharing it with my friends and relatives. So my uncle said, "Yeah, I believe in God. He's happy there, I'm happy here." So the idea is, often God doesn't seem to be very relevant. But when we connect, when we practice bhakti, when we do our sadhana, then what happens for us is, the world becomes smaller and Krishna becomes bigger. And when this happens, now we may say, what is the relevance of, what is the benefit of the world becoming smaller and Krishna becoming bigger? Now I'm not saying the world becomes Maya in the sense of false. That's not our philosophy. The world is also real. But when the world becomes smaller, then the world's problems don't threaten us so much. We don't feel so overwhelmed by the world's problems. And we also don't feel so captivated by the world's pleasures. So both ways, the world is a place of duality. Kabhi khushi, kabhi gum. So if the world is big, then every duality seems to be very big for us. So one day I go to office or I go to college, and maybe some professor compliments me, did a good job. This college is so wonderful, this is the best course. I love it. And next day the professor gives some feedback. Why did I even choose this course? I hate it. So those dualities keep us emotionally unstable. But when the world becomes small for us, then even the dualities become small. So we'll find that we will be less shaken by life's ups and downs. And in that sense, for us, when we are chanting the holy names, when we are hearing mini class, when we are praying to Krishna, it is not just a ritual that we get through. The purpose of doing our sadhana is to give ourselves a reminder that there is a bigger reality. That there is, normally the way we function, yes, the world will be prominent in our consciousness, and it needs to be, because we want to function in the world effectively. But at the background, we need to be aware there is bigger reality. And it's like at the start of the day, we bring ourselves here to sadhana. And by the end of the day, we will lie down over it. And again, the next day when we start, we again have to get ourselves there. So this is our sadhana that will get us here. So the world's battles, quite often, like in cricket or the sport, there are mind games. Previously, the Australians were known for what is the word? Sledging. Yeah, sledging. So when I went to Australia, people there are very cool and laid back. Like after a class, nobody even asks questions because they're very laid back. And I asked them, this is not the image of Australia and India. They're very aggressive. They're laid back in everything except cricket. But sledging is there. So the thing is that there are mental games that are played. So often when we face the world's problems, there are problems out there, no doubt. And there are pleasures out there. But the mind can make the pleasures seem far bigger than what they actually are. And the mind can make the problems seem far bigger than what they are. So if the world is the only reality in our consciousness, then we get very shaken by life's ups and downs. So yes, now to remind ourselves that there is a bigger reality on a daily basis, that requires effort. So that is a battle. But once we have fought that battle and we have reminded ourselves that Krishna is the bigger reality, then the remaining battles become easier to fight, because at the mental level we are not intimidated or dominated. Oh, this is so big, how can I keep this up? This is so big, how can I face it? With respect to pleasure and trouble. That's how it, in the net result, it is hugely beneficial. It can help us, it is a battle that can help us to fight all our other battles better.
प्रभु, मतलब अगर वो बैटल जीतना है, we have to fight one battle, that is your sadhana or your early morning whatever practice that you have. Prabhu, it intrigues me at this point to ask you.
Just yesterday I read an article in Harvard Medical School published in a website. They said that one of the biggest neglected factors of social health and social health policies is religion and spiritual practice. There are now numerous surveys which have been done which find that people who have some kind of committed spiritual practice or even religious affiliation, means that they go to a church or a temple or a mosque, they go regularly, they are less prone to mental health problems like depression, suicidal ideation, anxiety, addiction, and even physical issues, vulnerable to heart attacks, strokes. So survey after survey has been done, and it's almost always been consistent. So Sigmund Freud had this idea that religion is an illusion, opiate. So this article said that if religion is an opiate, then it is a very healthy opiate. Yeah.
Wow. Prabhu, at this point it intrigues me to ask you, one battle, one inner battle that you fought, or one personal challenge that you fought, and maybe your teachings from the Gita or your spiritual practices helped you get yourself out of it, to get victorious over it. or
I always had a struggle with anger, and I was never physically violent, but I was always very good at words. And having a short temper and a great vocabulary is a terrible combination. Some people get angry and they just become incoherent. You can see they're angry, but you can't even make sense of what they're saying. But some people, if they are really articulate and they're angry, they can become so sarcastic and insult and cut people that creates lifelong wounds. So I was like that. So I can't say that I have completely conquered anger. I don't think anybody can do that. But at least to 70-80%, I have been able to restrain my anger. And I would say that had two components to it. One is it worked at a subconscious level. As I started practicing bhakti, it just almost my angry outburst magically decreased. I'd say that was at least 50%. The remaining 30% was conscious work. So that means that by the practice of bhakti, I came a little more sattva-guna. I started anticipating. When we are in sattva-guna, sattva is associated with more clarity. So if we have more clarity, then we can anticipate which situations we are likely to get provoked. And then we better prepare for those situations. We try to avoid those situations. So that has been something which has been substantially helpful for me. Even now when I get angry, I have a policy that if I'm angry, I will just dictate a very angry audio message. I will type a very angry email. Because that anger is there within me, I want to get it out of me. I don't know. See, what happens is the anger is there, and anger, if we express it, it burns others. Yeah. But if we repress it, it burns us. So what I do is, I just get it out of I write it down. Journaling has been very helpful for me. So I just write it down, I dictate it, but I will not send it for at least 24 hours. So I get it off the chest and then keep it pending for 24 hours. After 24 hours, I come back and rehear it or reread it. That's me, this is a bit too harsh. Maybe if I have written 5 points in that time, okay, 1 point is this is just too nonsense. This 1 point is a reasonable point. Maybe I need to explain a little bit better. This 1 point, I need to get more information. So basically, this is like an example of negotiation between lower self and the higher self. So it's like I am expressing it, but this expressing is pride. So let me get it out of myself. The lower self is angry, and I cannot wish away the lower self at that time. But I don't want others to be hit by my lower self. So, okay, let me express it. And then let me wait and observe. And then when I evaluate it after a day, I find that sometimes I don't feel the need to send any message at all. If I send a message, I will substantially edited and softened or balanced. Or it may even become from an angry outburst, may just become a set of questions. What exactly happened? Can you explain when this happened? Why? What made you do this? How did you arrive at this decision? Or why did you speak like this? And so I would say anger has been it's been a constant challenge for me, and bhakti has substantially helped me to deal.
wow. And Prabhu, you've taken the time and effort to consciously work on stuff. Wow.
There is some part of it which works just magically, but the transformation requires hard work. Like some conditionings, how should I put it? So in India, I wanted to regain control of Kashmir. I have a friend who's in Kashmir. and he's deputed over there. He said, some parts the militants didn't really have much control over there. So when the Indian army decided to clamp down on it, they got the control of those parts very easily. But the other parts, it's very difficult for them to reach there because it's very tightly interest. The militants mixed with civilians, and who's a militant, who is a supporter of a militant, who is a neutral person. So there to reach there became much more difficult. So like that I feel by bhakti, some battles are won, or some parts of the battle are won very easily. And some battles require effort.
Prabhu, yes, you said some battles do require effort, and I'm sure each and every one of us, maybe professionally, in our own relationships or emotionally, we are fighting our own inner battles, big or small. And ये सब के चक्कर में we do get injured, घायल तो होते हैं. If you're fighting a war, yes, you will get injured. Prabhu, how important do you feel is it to forgive yourself for the mistakes you've made in the past, or unknowingly or unintentionally that have happened, that have repercussions, but do you just sit and beat yourself down, or how do you forgive yourself and move on?
It's a difficult decision. It's going back to the war example. If a soldier is wounded, you don't send them to the prison. You send them to the hospital. Because a wound needs to be treated. But suppose that soldier was running away from the battle. Now, running away from a battlefield for a soldier is considered to be an extremely serious wrongdoing. They are called deserters. Then, if the soldier was a deserter, then their wounds need to be treated, but they also need to be punished in some ways. So, basically, when there is some kind of shortcoming or wrongdoing, there are two distinct approaches to it. One is like the moral approach, and the other is the clinical approach. That means what? Like, the moral approach is, this is wrong, and you are responsible for doing something wrong, and therefore you need to be penalized. So generally the right takes the moral approach, the left takes the clinical approach. Clinical approach means that, say for example, alcoholism. Now, if somebody is an alcoholic, in the West where all the people drink very often, their philosophy is drink but don't get drunk. So the idea is that you have to be a responsible drinker. They don't think that drinking is itself irresponsible. But anyway, whatever it is. But the point is that even in the West, if somebody used to drink too much, you need to control yourself. So alcoholism is considered, say, to be an individual problem. You have to become more responsible. You have to have more willpower. But as times are changing, leftist thoughts is spreading more and more. Now alcoholism is seen not as a moral defect. It is seen as a medical disorder. And alcoholism needs to be treated, not disciplined. Now, which is true. Now, if alcoholism is a disease, then the person needs to go to a hospital. But if alcoholism, it's a moral defect, then the person needs to be punished. If a person drinks and drives, they may have their driving license taken away, they may be put in jail. So, which is true? Well, it depends. What does it depend on? That, say, when I was in Canada, I had gone to Calgary to a university to give a class over there. And that university happened to be on top of a hill. And it was freezing winter. Canada, the western part of Canada, is actually colder. Canada, Calgary, Vancouver are much colder than Toronto. Toronto itself is very cold. But so Calgary, this was on top of a hill. And as we were driving up a winding road up the hill, we saw how a snowball is actually formed. So at the top, it's just a snow pebble. And if some person were there over here, they could just kick it with their toe and it would crack apart. But if it starts coming down, it starts becoming bigger. It becomes a snowball. Then it becomes a snow rock. By the time it comes down, it becomes a snow boulder. And there, if a person is there, the person will get crushed. It's the same thing. So like that with respect to alcoholism. Somebody goes to college. And then college and the parents say, let's drink. I said, no, I don't want to drink. No. Parents told me, if you don't drink, it's a bad habit. Come on, grow up. Don't be a baby, drink. Say, okay, let me try out once. And somebody tries out drinking once, somebody tries out drugs once. Because at that time, it's like a pebble. You could just say no, it can just crack apart. But if somebody drinks once, twice, thrice, 10 times, 50 times, after that, it's the inner impressions become so strong that it's almost beyond the capacity of the person to save. So at that time, even if the person is sincere, doesn't I want to give it up, but they may have to admit themselves into some rehabilitation center where they are externally denied access to alcohol. Of course, they are given external support and other things. So the point I'm making is that if something is a matter of willpower, if something happened because of a failing of willpower, then punishing or disciplining the person is helpful. But if something was beyond the capacity of the willpower, like if a giant snowball is coming, a snow boulder is coming towards me and I fail to stop it, and you punish me for failing to stop it, that's terrible, that's unfair. So we have to understand when we are fighting the inner battles, which battles are winnable for us and which battles may not be winnable for us. And that doesn't mean we have to be defeated in those battles and that we have to be destroyed by them. That means we may need some external protection. We may need some external support to be able to fight those battles. So the idea is that should we always forgive ourselves when we do something wrong or something we fall short of our own expectations, our aspirations, our values, our purposes? Well, not always. Sometimes we have to be hard on ourselves. Now, sometimes when it was possible for us to make a healthier choice and we failed, then we have to be strong on ourselves. I have to pull myself together. There are times when it's not that is completely beyond our willpower, but at that time it will be beyond our willpower. So we need to be kind to ourselves. So the key point, I'll say, is how do we conclude this? When to be hard on ourselves and when to be kind to ourselves, when to be gentle with ourselves. The key point is that our relationship with ourselves, this relationship needs to be a healthy relationship. So, now what does a healthy relationship mean? Generally, the characteristic of a healthy relationship. A healthy relationship, broadly you can say there are two characteristics. There is pleasure. If we are in a healthy relationship with someone, being with that person, we like it. We enjoy it, that romantic relationship or a friendly relationship, whatever. If we are in a healthy relationship, we like to be with that person. There's pleasure, but there is also growth. That being with that person makes me a better person. And I being with that person inspires that person to be good. So the healthiest relationship is where there's both pleasure and growth. So like that, for us, if we think about ourselves, and as soon as we think about ourselves, if our first thought is, I'm such a fool, I didn't do that right, and I didn't do that right, and I didn't do that right. Then A, like some people, there is self-loathing. That is not healthy at all. We all have certain things which we can like about ourselves. We all have certain things which we may not like about ourselves. So now we have to make sure that the part of ourselves that we like, that has to be adequately highlighted. So otherwise, if as soon as I start thinking about myself, as soon as say I have some free time, when I'm not busy doing this thing or that thing, meeting with this person or meeting that deadline, then as soon as I have some free time, the first thought of myself is, no, you fool, why didn't you do that right? You fool, why didn't you do that right? You are such a terrible person. That's not it. So if the default thought of ourselves is negative, I repeat it, that is not a healthy situation. But on the other side, as soon as we have some free time for ourselves, oh, I'm such a great person, I did this and I did that and I did that and I did that. So if we deny or downplay completely the parts of us which need work, then that is also a problem. So like in a healthy relationship, no person is ideal. We all have limitations. You say, what is that? Love is blind, but marriage is an eye opener. So now we all have parts of us which we like, parts of us which we dislike. Parts of us, parts of the other person. But if we are serious about a relationship, we will focus on the parts that we like. And we will manage the parts that we dislike, the parts that need work. So, there is saying, it all works in progress. Now there is another word called progress. Not progress, but progress. So while we are making progress, we often make a mess. But while making that mess, are we going upwards or are we going downwards? So I would say we have to look at ourselves carefully. Overall, our relationship with ourselves should be healthy. So healthy relationship means, as I said, two things. Our focus is on the positives within us, but there is awareness of the negatives. And we are also adequately working on the negatives. So if there is only, if I talk about my relationship with myself, if I am only looking at positives, only positives, then that will lead to ego. That will lead to arrogance. And a typical example of arrogant person. Like normally, if you meet someone, you will say that if somebody is a famous person, so it's an honor to meet you. It's an honor for me to meet you. But an example of an egoistic person is, if you meet someone, he says, it's an honor for you to meet me. Can you imagine somebody saying like that? No, it may be true, but that person should not say that, isn't it? So, like ego is one focus only on one's positives. But on the other hand, if you focus only on one's negatives, that will lead to insecurity. That will lead to feelings of inferiority. This can spiral down to depression and so many other things can happen. So that's why the balance is, our focus is on the positives. But there is awareness of the negatives. Not just awareness in the positive sense, but we are also working on it. So should we forgive ourselves when we make some mistakes? Yes. So that our entire energy is not going in beating ourselves down. What a terrible mistake I made, But should we just forgive ourselves nonchalantly? I know, no big deal. Oh, I made a mistake over here. What do I learn from this? What do I learn from this so that at least I am better prepared? Sometimes we will say we should never make the same mistake again. But sometimes that's not possible. Because some conditioning is so strong that we make the same mistake again and again. But okay, even if I make the same mistake again, maybe I can prevent making that mistake to the same degree. Last time I went on social media and I spent 7 hours. And from today onwards, I'll never be on social media. then that's not going to work into me. But maybe I can plan in such a way that I have some obligatory engagement so that, even if I spend some time, I will, after half an hour, 1 hour, I have something else to do and I do that and I create some engagements. I don't let long slots of blank time available for me in which could be sucked in by just mindless entertainment or whatever. So we may still lose an inner battle, but we may not lose it that bad. So that way we can prepare ourselves. So basically, it's like going to the positives and negatives, only positives. If we are just forgiving ourselves, that will again, like earlier said, there will be no improvement in stagnation or degradation. But we are just overlooking or denying our shortcomings, our mistakes. That's also not good. So in between, it's with acknowledging and then acting. Acting not to necessarily to prevent it forever, but at least we are better prepared to face it. If it is.
Prabhu, you drew that the image of a snow pebble and it snowballs into a snow boulder. It reminds me of many instances, where many of my college friends who started drinking by with that same thing, just try one peg. It's not much. Just one beer here and there. It's not much. But then they start rationalizing with it. That society has been so unfair to me. Family has been so unfair to me, and so many things have not worked in my favor. And that's the reason I've been drinking. It's not me who is the problem. But these are the ones who are the main cause for me getting into this. And by what you've explained, Prabhu, that there is a chance we do get into that spiral where we think, oh, I was not bad, I was never bad. It's these people, these circumstances who've made me bad. And there lies a bigger challenge to change, because I was never bad at all. So
there is truth to that. And after I started traveling to America, I realized that at least my childhood was so protected. Although I had lost my mother when I was just 13, 14, my father took very good care of me. When I look at kids in America and see the parenting is so complicated. There is sometimes domestic violence is a small thing, but it's many other things where kids come. Not all kids. I don't want to stereotype America, because America is also a huge country, bigger than India, and a lot of differences. But see, there are broken families, and this one is like domestic violence. This is at a physical level. Another is emotional level. Kids are traumatized when they grow up in such difficult situations, emotionally drained, tormented. Sometimes the couple separates. Both of them try to poison the mind of the kid against other parent. That's so immature. When the kid becomes like a tennis ball between the two parents. It's terrible. So yes, life is tough. And at one level, we do understand that life is not just tough, life is unfairly hard. That means life is difficult for everyone, but some people it is far more difficult than others. And psychologically, everyone feels that my life is tougher than everyone else's. Now, I'm not saying that it's just psychological. It's objectively true. When I was in Scotland, I met some devotees who were in Ukraine. And they said they had a flourishing community, devotees, they were having their own professions. I met one devotee who was a doctor in Ukraine. And he was now driving an Uber in Scotland. Because the medical certification in Ukraine is not recognized in UK. So it's a terrible thing for them. So we all may have our problems, and we can't say that our problems are anywhere close to somebody whose whole life has been disrupted. So there are degrees of problems, no doubt. And certainly, if somebody has been through difficulties, and somebody seeks some some escapee from that difficulty which makes life worse. That is understanding. Having said that, we humans, because we are at our core spiritual beings, there is an incredible capacity for resilience. Sometimes people say, why are so many people depressed? I say the question you should be asking is, why is everyone not depressed? Well, life is so difficult. And especially now we get depressing news from everywhere in the world. The human mind is not designed for having so much negativity coming in from everywhere. No, people are glued to social media. And the question is not why so many people are glued to social media. Why is it that everyone is not glued to social media all the time? Because these things, they don't satisfy me. So there is the spiritual part of us. The Atma is indestructible. It's not just at a spiritual level in terms of it cannot be destroyed. There is an indefatigable spirit within all of us. And that can be manifested to a lesser or greater degree. But it is there. And some of the most inspiring stories in human history are stories of people who have risen above their circumstances. People who came from very bad backgrounds, but they actually arose above them. And that's what inspires. I was speaking in Google a few months ago in America. So I was telling an incident from my childhood. And you notice that I need crutches for walking. So when I was one, I got polio. Basically, I was given a vaccine, but the vaccine was, I was in a small town and the fridge in which the doctor had kept the vaccine, the fridge had lost its power the previous day. So basically what happened, because of lack of refrigeration, the germs grew. And the vaccine, instead of preventing polio, ended up giving me polio. So I was just walking normally and I fell down and I could never walk normally after that. So, of course, I don't remember this, but my first memory of this is when I was growing up, probably I was 2.5, 3 or whatever. Some relative had come to meet us, and a relative was consoling my mother, saying that it's so sad that your son got polio. And my mother, I remember her speaking very clear, confident voice. Whatever he lacks physically, God will provide him intellectually. Now, whatever 2.5, 3, I don't know what intellectual size I had seen for my mother. I had shown for my mother to say that. But somehow, from that time onwards, I started identifying more with my intellectual side. So when I was growing up, I couldn't play other games like other kids could play. I could say that was unfair. But then when I started studying, I could read much faster than other kids. I could understand things much better. I could articulate far more clearly. I could remember so much better than everyone else. And I realized that I didn't do anything to deserve this either. So I give a lot of credit to my mother for this. That although she said, God will give you, I didn't think about God, I only took about the intellectual at that part. But somehow from that time I identified my intellectual side much more than my physical. And let's say the physical side doesn't occupy a lot of head space for me. For me, my crutches are like my glasses. I can't see very well without my glasses. But it's no big deal. Put on the glasses and pick up the crutches and move on with life. It doesn't have to occupy a lot of mental space. So, all of us have difficulties in our there are different kinds of difficulties. And yes, you could say our past can explain our emotions. I just feel like forgetting all this by drinking and watching TV or doing this, doing that. Our past can explain our emotions, but our past doesn't excuse our actions. It doesn't excuse our actions. That is for us. We have the capacity to choose. Maybe in a small way. So yes, some people could say that in this particular situation, this is what happened. Because of this, I started drinking. Okay, maybe true. But if we can make small, better choices, and we can grow. So we are shaped by our circumstances, but we are not completely controlled by our circumstances. So everybody has some terrible situations in their life, but everybody has some blessings. And if we focus on those blessings, then that can give us some positivity. Yeah, it's not that my life is uncondemned. So if we do that, then I think we can make better decisions. So it is not easy having said that. So I don't know if my mother had not said that statement, that statement had not created such a statement. It was not, my mother was not saying that to me. I don't remember her repeating it any time after that. When she was speaking, I just happened to be there and I heard it and it had an impact on me. So there is, my understanding is that Krishna, God, will give us some light, some path toward light. And if we take that path, we will see there is more light. But if we don't take that path, if we just keep choosing the dark side, then we will go into more darkness. But having said that, I wouldn't blame someone if they have made bad choices. Really. It's like, the bad choices have been made. But let's see what good choice you can do now. Like if somebody says, I just can't live without drinking. Okay. Instead of 6 drinks, can you take 4 drinks? What can you do right now? Maybe in some situations, some things cannot be given up. Like if somebody has gone down to the snow boulder now, then that battle you can't fight. But does that mean you can't fight any battle? We conclude this one last point. See, we all have the lower side within us. It has these surges. So we have our urges, and the urges have surges. So somebody has alcohol, somebody has a drug, somebody has a TV binging, somebody has overeating, whatever it is. Those urges are there. And when those urges become high, it's almost impossible to say no. Maybe it's true.
But what about in between?
No urge, however destructive it is, it dominates a person 24 hours a day with the same degree of severity. Alcoholic will be always ready to drink, but that doesn't mean they are driven to drink all the time with the same degree of urge. Okay, maybe when that urge comes, you cannot fight that battle. Maybe you cannot win that battle. But what about you? Can you do something? At that time you feel sorry for yourself, and even when the urge is not there, keep drinking more. Or now, I want to do something of value. So it's like going back to the war metaphor. Like there are invaders, which are like raiders, and invaders which are occupiers. So temptation as a raider might be unavoidable. Like when the temptation comes on a raid, you know the word raid, somebody attacks and plunders. When they come on a raid, then like income tax raid you say, that's a common word. So when it comes as a raid, we may not be able to resist it. But you don't have to let it become occupied. That is something you can avoid. Even if somebody is drinking too much, you don't have to define themselves as alcoholic and keep drinking when the urge is not. Okay, the urge is not that strong right now. There are sometimes say somebody is depressed. There are sometimes these feelings of depression, they just overwhelm us. We work very hard in some area and we don't do very well and somebody else does much better than me. Okay, that time we don't feel it. But at that time, it just be not possible to think about anything else. Okay, that time we are down for maybe 6 hours, 1 day. But after that, do I have to let it occupy my mind all the time? Can I not think of something else? Can I not tell my mind something else? Well, that is where Krishna consciousness can be very powerful. So even if we can't resist the urges, we can persist between the urges. And that is the hope for us. Yes, there are times when we may be reminded of all the things that are wrong in our life, and it might just overwhelm us with negativity. But those don't have to become our constant thoughts. So when we have the opportunity to think of something, let's do something, let's do that. Oh, we can't resist, that's okay. But we can persist in doing something else, something more constant.
Wow. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for that wonderful explanation. And I'd like to thank your mother too. She really played Nostradamus that time.
That's beautiful. Rishi, thank you for that.
Thank you, Prabhu. And at this point, I'd like to give our beloved audience a chance to pose questions to Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So I'll circulate the mic from here. And oh, you do have mics? Okay.
And thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the insightful lecture. A point that really inspired me was how important it is to prioritize our spiritual activities in the morning, and that will help us fight the dualities for the rest of the day. Prabhuji, sometimes what happens is that we reach a certain point in our life that we achieve that seamlessness and that consistency in our spiritual life, and we gain a sort of holistic balance in our material and spiritual life. But then it's like Maya की खुशी, Maya से हमारी खुशी देखी नहीं जाती. So there is circumstantial problems that kind of mess up our entire schedule and make things out of place, and we may end up creating perceptions in our mind like, oh, maybe Krishna doesn't see my progress, or perceptions like, why does life have to be unfair with me? And the devotee loses out the entire willpower in regaining that consistency back in life. So how do we fight that war?
Yeah, sometimes we say we should be consistent, but I think being consistent is too difficult in life. So if we can't be consistent, we can be resilient. Consistent means I'm always at this level. Resilient means from here, and we go down sometimes, then I'll rise up. We go down, I'll rise up. So when I said morning sadhana, sometimes life needs to be too difficult. And sometimes we have some work, we quite late night, sometimes the health is not good. Sometimes we just not have that mental disposition. So okay, wherever we need to give ourselves some space, give that space. But if we have a healthy relationship with ourselves, we work on that, then okay, I need this space right now. And yesterday was a very tiring day. Today I can't do this in the morning. I'll do it later in them. That's okay. So be resilient. Sometimes the struggle to be consistent, it's good to try to be consistent. But sometimes the struggle to be consistent can make us riddled with guilt about not being consistent. And when that happens, then unnecessarily we are losing energy with that guilt. So, okay, at this time this did work. That's okay. Let me accept that certain times are difficult in life. And move on with it. It's one more thing I would say is that, is it that Krishna is not seeing our progress? Or Krishna is not seeing our struggles? It can certainly feel like that at times. And well, philosophically we understand that Krishna never abandons us. Now Krishna is with us and Krishna is within us all the time. But sometimes it doesn't feel like that. So we can't just wish away our feelings. At that time we need association of devotees. And there are even among devotees, devotee association also, some devotee association is, we could say, more expecting from us. do this, and that's also required for our growth.
But some devotee association more accepting.
And we need both kind of association. So when we are in difficulty and we are down, at that time if we associate devotees who are only expecting from us, they will only get on our case and they will end up feeling worse. So we have to know which devotees are more accepting and what role they play in our life, and which devotees are more expecting and what role they play in our life. We need to have both kind of association. Then even if we don't feel the Krishna connection directly ourselves, we can feel that Krishna connection through devotees.
Hi Krishna Namaste, thank you so much for the amazing class. Very inspiring. This had probably might be a silly question, but sometimes we get overwhelmed with a lot of things happening, and then our mind or our brain goes like freeze, and we don't even process what is going on. And then to even identify, okay, this is a problem, this is the cause of the problem, this is the effect that is having it, this is how we can tackle it. Sometimes the feeling of getting overwhelmed is so much that like you just stop and then you go numb and you just start doing things in a very mechanical way. So what I
Yeah. See, the mind in some ways, if we consider, is like the body. It's the soul, mind and body. We are, sometimes we say we are not the body. That is true, but we live through the body. The body is not unimportant for us. It is not the most important thing. So the soul, mind and body are all three parts of who we are. And sometimes the mind also becomes weak, like the body becomes weak. See, sometimes if some people have some sickness, physical sickness, suddenly they lose energy. What can you do? Some people have migraine. Just get an attack. Then at that time they just have to see no light, close their eyes, and just be alone and recover. So sometimes our mind is like that. Okay, this is the machine, this is the tool that we have. I have this kind of body mind machine and I have to work with it. Especially because we are in a competitive world and we don't, generally nobody talks about their particular limitations in public. So we think, oh yeah, I have this limitation, nobody else has a limitation like this. But everybody has their issues. So we can't always anticipate it, but we might be able to see some patterns when this happens. So if somebody knows that, okay, these are the times when say I tend to get some weakness or physical weakness, then maybe at that time I won't do any physically demanding activity. Or if I'm going out somewhere, I won't go out alone, let's go with someone else. So if something goes wrong there then. So like that, try to anticipate or see some patterns in when we tend to become, our mind tends to become numb or just blank. And try to make sure that we are not making any major decisions at that time. We are not doing things which are very high stake. And then gradually just navigate through that phase. Krishna says, Tam Statikshasabhara, the tolerate. The tolerate doesn't just mean tolerate externals, but we tolerate the internals also. And this is the way the mind is right. And at least function with it, whatever I can. So what happens, because the mind is inside us, we start identifying too much with our mind. I have written a book called You Are Not Your Mind, You Are Better. So the idea is, because our mind is inside us, we often equate mental weakness with a character flaw. But it's not, it's just the mind. And some people can have a weak mind, or some people their mind can go through phases of weakness at times. So just two things I would say: anticipate it and try to avoid taking high stake decisions in the back time.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, some questions here. Where's the mic?
Hi. So before my question, great of love Dev Kunari, you said comprehensive. Thank you so much. Coming to my question, when you talk about the dualities, the nature of duality of things, of life in general, sometimes we tend to self-sabotage. Say you have a lot of good things happening in life, and then you go like, oh, too much of good. Now you will have something that's downfall or something bad. How do you prevent overthinking in that aspect?
I don't think you can prevent it completely. Right? It is sometimes that expectation that we will not self-sabotage, that expectation itself causes self-sabotage. Isn't it? So, there are forces inside us which work against us, and they're not going to go away overnight. They are going to be there. Like say, going back to Kashmir situation, I had this friend. Now Kashmir is relatively more peaceful, but that doesn't mean they don't need more security in the rest of the country. But there's still insurgent elements which are there. Now, some people may just see, okay, there is no point in this insurgency. We can be a part of India and we can progress nicely. But some people are just, we have to be against India. So that there'll be some kind of self-sabotage that will always happen. I would say always. It will happen for a long time. But again, if we have an attitude of curiosity towards our mind, towards ourselves basically, so then, okay, what are the times, what are the situations in a time trying to self-sabotage? So for example, like say some good things have happened to me, or some good things I have done. Now I'm going to do something bad. Maybe, maybe not. So the mind does not generally use unlimited tricks to fool us. It can, but it has some typical ways in which it tricks us. And so if we can find those and note those, and when we say hear some classes, we read some good wisdom literature, find out some ways to counter that. So, like, if somebody is going to battlefield, and then when the enemy is going to attack, then I need to have armor to defend myself, I need to have weapons to defend myself. So like that, inside us are our mind, inside us our intelligence. So, now if our mind comes up with some ideas, some kind of reasoning, oh, now that you've done 10 good things, now you're going to make a mess of things. Well, not necessarily. You can find out with the intelligence counters to the mind's arguments. And this is where I feel affirmations can be helpful. Earlier I said, affirmations, if they are about truths, they're statements that are just not true. Like if a 5 feet person says, I am 7 feet tall, and you make an affirmation like that, that kind of affirmations will be actually damaging. But affirmations about things that we ourselves know are true, but we tend to forget them, those kind of affirmations are very helpful. So look at typical patterns of what are the things that the mind thinks about. Okay, the mind says, okay, you may be good, but there's so many other people better than you. Okay, but does it mean that just because there are people better than me, that is, there's no space for me in the world? No, I have nonsense. So if our mind tends to compare a lot and create insecurity, then we have probably heard some classes about avoiding comparing mentality. So find some thoughts, some quotes, keep them in your phone in some app or something like that. And when the mind starts going in that typical direction of self-sabotage, see, sometimes the mind just ambushes us. It just completely an attack like a bolt out of the blue. But many times we can start sensing that, okay, now I'm going in this direction. It's sometimes like anger comes like a sudden burst of rage. But sometimes we can notice I'm becoming a little irritated right now. Not only I'm irritated, I'm becoming irritable now. That means any further things will irritate me more. So when we start noticing that itself, maybe take a pause, take a few deep breaths, maybe read some quotes about anger, about managing our emotions, and then come back. So basically, prepare ourselves. Then we will be able to minimize the damage due to self-sabotage. So even if you take 3 things, what are the 3 typical ways my mind takes me down? And then what are the points that I can use to challenge it or counter it in that way? We write it down, that can be very helpful. And then just read it. Sometimes not just read it in the mind, read it aloud. If you have some quote, you read it aloud. One of my favorite quotes about anger is that those who anger us conquer us. My anger may be genuine, but if they impel me to anger to act out in their anger that way, then they are conquering me. Not only controlling me, they are conquering me. So when I read that, okay, let me calm down. So basically find out some strategies for anticipating and preparing for those phases of self-sabotage. I'm okay, but I think all of you must also be hungry. There's another battle going on inside you. So, if you want, we can serve the food and we can continue question answer if any of you have questions. I want to take food here only or somewhere else? So, yeah, so you can maybe, can you serve it to them directly or they have to go there and take it? Okay. Let's complete this question, then we can decide after that.
So, Bo, we were recently speaking about inner self. So, when we are going through some important moments of our life, it can be an exam or interview or a presentation, it happens that our inner self doesn't let us put in 100% of something. Now, it could be because of anxiety or pressure, nervousness. So, at that point of time, what should your mindset be? Even though we might have the potential to crack something, but still there is something that stops us. So when in those moments, what should your thinking be conquered?
Well, so see, in these kind of things, what exactly is 100%? How are you going to quantify that? So sometimes our expectation of ourselves also becomes a pressure on ourselves. Now, of course, when there's an objective ranking, we could say, okay, this question I knew the answer, but I made a silly mistake or something like that. But in many cases, life is not that simple. So, when Krishna says karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, what its point is that what we put into the world is in our control, but what we get from the world is not in our control. Sometimes we worry so much about what we will get from the world that is what prevents us or impedes us in what we put into the world. So that focus, like when some people say that don't care for the results, that is not what the Gita is teaching. Gita is saying definitely. Gita says in this is 247 in the Gita, karmanyevadhikaras. But just few verses, 241 is vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana. Be one pointed in the goal. Don't have multiple things which distract you in multiple directions. So it's not. So there's a difference between setting goals and getting results. So goals are before we do an activity. Results are what we get after the activity. So Krishna is not saying don't set goals. He's saying don't be attached to results. So basically in any activity there is what we put in and what we get out of it. So what we put in, that is in our control to a significant degree. Maybe not entirely, but to a significant degree. What we get out of it, that is not in our control. So quite often when we are unable to put in our 100%, that is because we are getting too caught in what we will get out of it. Say if I am going to give a talk, and if I am too worried about how will people look at me? What will people think about me? Will people respect me? Will people pay attention to me? Now, that is not in my control. It's like in a tennis match, when the player is serving, they have much more control. I can get the ball, send the ball in the forehead, the forehand, the backhand, into the body, wherever. But when you are returning, wherever the ball is going to come, that's where you need to put the racket and get the ball back into the play. So like that, sometimes we have much greater control over things. Sometimes we have much lesser control over things. So what we put in is in our control. Like when I came for this talk, what I was going to speak, I had prepared some things. But what kind of questions would come up, he told that I was not completely sure. And I cannot be sure. Some understanding I have because I'm speaking for 30 years almost. But I don't have complete control over that. So I think the best way to minimize that anxiety or minimize the distracting forces is to focus on what we can put in. And that's why live in the present, they say. Now we want to live in the present, but we also want to live for something bigger than the present. That means my purpose is far bigger than the present. But the progress that I am going to make toward that bigger purpose is going to be in the present. So in that sense, let me put in the best that I can in this moment. If I put in the best that I can in this moment, then what result I get, that I have done my best part. Let the result come out. So you will try to avoid thinking of anything that is beyond our control. And then we'll find that, the more we let go of the things beyond our control, the more we can catch hold of the things that are in our control. Like they say in writing, like many times authors get a writer's block, or creativity, we get a creative block. So what they say is that writing is just typing one word at a time. Drawing is just making one line at a time. Just focus on this step. So if you can focus on what is in our control, nobody can say that I have such a creative block that I cannot type one letter also. Okay, maybe type one word, type one more word, and it will move over there. Okay? Thank you, good question.